Hey everybody, welcome to InPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Happy week! I hope your week has been full of inspiring action. I hope you've pushed through some walls of fear that you were not expecting to push through. I hope that you have been bringing your light into the world because, man, this is sure the time frame to absolutely expand our greatest potential and to move forward. And today, we're going to have a little sample platter of all sorts of cool stuff I want to talk about today. And it was brought to me by the universe. This whole month really has been about vibration and how do we align our vibration in a way that's helpful. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on to start out here as we talk about different vibrations, because there's a fear and love vibration, there's sound vibrations, there's color vibrations. And one of the things that I really want to get into just to start our hour off here is the vibration of sound and how important that is in terms of releasing not only negative little chunks of ickiness that we, carry in our body, but also releasing very fabulous portions of our DNA and activating those. Okay, so we've got 12 rungs of our DNA, right? And we've got 23 down below. And really, we only use the first 2 rungs of our DNA. And I've talked lightly and a little bit about this before, yet I really want to get into the first part of our podcast today, how sound literally gets in there and unlocks healing portions of our DNA. Now, I've touched on this during these podcasts before, yet I've actually given really in-depth classes on how the resonation of sound gets into our DNA and unlocks healing chromosomes. So I want you to think about this for a second, okay? The first 2 rungs of our DNA basically run our body. That is our body template. Those first 2 rungs are making sure that we can heal a broken bone and reproduce and create cellular structure. Those 2 rungs of DNA are also responding to changes in our environment, right? And, I go on and on and on about how we've got all these changes in our air and our water and how we have huge potential to get past all of these obstacles. Yet our DNA is literally morphing at the speed of vibration. And I don't think that folks actually understand well, I'm going to use the H word here to be totally dramatic, but it's really true. The holy union between the spirit and the body. Gang, there is no separation between mind, body, spirit. There is no hierarchy in mind, body, spirit. All of these incredible attributes that we think about in a triangle, mind, body, spirit, are one vibration represented in different matter, in the mind, in the body, in the spirit. So when we talk about vibration and sound and DNA, when we look at those lower 12 rungs of DNA that science considers junk, they literally consider that DNA to be junk DNA. Can you believe it? I mean, we live as evolved creatures, and nature does not waste a thing. It doesn't waste anything. So the idea that we would be packing around chromosomes that, well, we no longer need, they're just, junk, and we just hold on to those in our DNA strands 100,000 years later because the body has nothing better to do with them, that is absolutely not true. It's just not true. Vibration is what unlocks those lower 12, okay? Or those lower 10. And people talk about the 23 rungs, whatever, those lower 20. Vibration is what unlocks the rest of our DNA. Now, what unlocks those first 2 rungs to take care of the body? Chemicals. And the first 2 rungs of DNA are activated through chemical release. And so within our cells, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, but just to revisit this, in our cells, in the nucleus of every cell lives your DNA. And that DNA cannot touch the cell membrane. It cannot touch the cell walls. It just can't. And if it does, then we end up with all kinds of problems. Mostly the vibration and chemical content of the flesh cell kills the DNA. No kidding. I mean, the DNA has to exist in the cell nucleus in a completely different vibration, it's like a wormhole inside of every cell. So if the DNA is going to communicate with our cells, and this does have to do with vibration, we'll get there, yet if the DNA is going to communicate with our cells, like to say heal a broken bone or decide to grow a baby or whatever, heal something in your body, the cell has to send a translator into that environment, into that wormhole, into that bubble where the vibration of the DNA is different. And that translator is called RNA. So that RNA it leaves the realm of the physical cell and swims through a little porthole into that, we're going to call it this tank, this high vibration tank that the DNA rests in, okay? The RNA swims inside of there and it gets into the DNA and it unzips the DNA and it extracts, like checking out a library book, it extracts the portion of that DNA that it needs to go heal that broken bone. And then it links all of those library book information parts together. It's like downloading what it needs from the DNA. It leaves the DNA in its special little pressurized vibrational tank and leaves up through the pressure hatch of the nuclear pore, okay, goes back out into the flesh portion of the cell, into the lower vibration cell. And the lower vibration cell has no idea how to communicate directly with the DNA. Did you know that? It's a true thing because the DNA is, guys, here we go. The DNA is on a 5D resonation. The cell is on a 3D resonation. So the RNA is a little translator that can go between those two realms and those two worlds. So here comes the RNA. It goes back into the flesh realm of the cell, and it starts producing little chemical directives that the flesh cell in 3D can understand. So it is translating the data that it pulled off of the DNA in the DNA's little high vibration, little protected tank, and it is translating it in a way from 5D to 3D that the flesh can understand it. So it's creating little strands of protein directives for how to actually go and mend a bone or how to grow a baby. So this is happening at light speed all the time. Our RNA is diving in on those first two rungs, okay? Those first two rungs of our DNA strands are all about taking care of the flesh. And that RNA is the translator between 5D and 3D. All right. So when you hear about people in our metaphysical community talking about, we're moving into 5D creation, well, we already are. I mean, we already are 5D creations at the very base level of who and what we are. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Cyril, where does vibration come into this? Well, science looks at all of these other DNA strands below the first two rungs that we understand how they work. Below those first two rungs, science looks at that and says, well, gee, nobody's accessing those two strands. The RNA is not tapping those strands, so they must be junk DNA that we no longer need. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've looked in the mirror, we humans no longer have tails. We have a tailbone, but we don't have tails because the need for a tail wasn't useful as a two-legged creature. So we evolved out of those tails. So the idea that the very base ingredient wormhole of creation, of how we're designed, the idea that we would just drag along extra DNA just cause, who cares, right, is ridiculous. It does not make sense scientifically. It does not make sense spiritually. It does not make sense when you take a look at how nature absolutely wastes nothing. So it's not going to drag around this extra 12 rungs of DNA if it's unuseful. What unlocks those bottom rungs? Well, it's not chemical because the RNA would be going in to translate. It's vibrational. It's vibrational. Oh, please hear this. This is huge. This is huge news that I had downloaded to me about a year ago from the angelic realm. And I'm sure I'm not the only practitioner with this stuff coming to me, gang. I'm sure everybody else who works in this realm is probably getting a similar broadcast that I am. Yet I would tell you that vibration is what unlocks all of those lower DNA rungs. And I've touched on this lightly before in different podcasts, but man, is vibration, that seems to be the theme of this month, is vibration and what we work with vibrationally. So what does that mean? What does vibration mean? Does that mean that we have to, sit on the washer during the spin cycle and vibrate our DNA so that it opens up and we can access all of the abilities that are in those rungs of DNA? Well, what's been brought to me is that there are several types of vibration that actually activate this DNA, okay? One of them is sound, and frequencies. Now, part of that is the way that the actual frequency coming out of a speaker in a room will actually permeate the flesh and vibrate the flesh, okay? However, the actual physical effect of a sound wave on the body is only part of the puzzle here. The other part of what sound does is it creates what are called harmonics when the brain processes the sound. So I know this is like Mr. Science today or Ms. Science. Welcome to how vibration activates the brain to heal the DNA. So here's the thing, okay? Go with me here. Go down this rabbit hole. This is going to be so fun. I love this stuff. All right. So you don't actually hear with your ears. The ears translate vibration into nerve pulses, and the nerve pulses are translated to the brain, yet it is the brain that hears the sound. The ears are just catching the vibration in order to funnel them to the nerve impulses. This is why, if you've ever seen someone who's had a hearing implant, they're actually, through their skull. They're going through their skull and they can hear that way. They're not trying to activate their ear. They're activating that portion of the skull and the brain that hears. It's pretty cool, right? It's the new bionic ear. It just bypasses the ear and goes right through the skull and you can hear. So keeping this in mind, when we activate certain tones, the brain hears those tones and the brain begins to vibrate in a certain way. Now, the brain is full of electromagnetic relays called synapses. And those synapses, I want you to think of arcs of electricity. Actually, when you look at a thunderstorm, it looks just like the brain. It looks just like the brain firing off. Yet that's sort of the synaptic effect of our atmosphere. So in our minds, right now, as I'm speaking to you, I have this lightning storm of thoughts that are happening. Now, actually, those tiny electrical snaps that are happening in the brain, and they're tiny, they're microscopic, those have a frequency. So when my brain is listening to certain sounds, the brain begins to resonate and conduct those sounds through those synapses. Now, because the synapses themselves, the lightning storm of the brain, actually has its own tonality to it. I mean, think about thunder. You have lightning and then thunder, and obviously we don't have thunder in our head. Well, there's some days when I feel like I got a hell of a lot of thunder in my head, let me tell you. But it's not technical. We don't actually have thunder in our head. However, the synapses do create a frequency. So what we've got is the ambient sound of the brain. Then we've got tones that come in and the brain begins to vibrate at those tones. Now, what happens when we combine those tones, because also consider the brain is mostly water. I mean, it's a watery organ up there, and that's why with all that salt water, we're able to transmit so much information so quickly. And salt water is a huge conductor of sound. Think about whales talking to each other from 200, 500, 1,000, 1,500 miles away. I mean, my God, it's incredible what those guys can do. They just throw sound like nobody's business, in part because they live in the world's largest sound relaying medium, salt water, okay? So your brain is relaying sound within it, frequency within it all the time. So when certain tones hit the brain and those tones resonate and they start to create what's called a harmonic, and I'll get to that in a second, with the natural sound that's in the brain, okay, this cues the brain to begin to unlock portions of the DNA. It is a resonant cue that says, hey, here we have this sound that's resonating. We've got this harmonic that's created between the ambient noise in the brain and this particular frequency, and now it's unlocking those lower 12 rungs. So it is vibration, not chemical cues, that unlock those lower rungs of DNA. Well, now, of course, science isn't really going to pay attention to this because our knowledge of DNA is based on the physical, right? I mean, science and medicine, we pay attention to the physical, and that's very meritorious for that field. Yet for those of us who work outside of the realm of the physical, I have the opportunity to see this vibration, this harmonic, and I'll tell you what a harmonic is in just a second, begin to cue those lower rungs of DNA, and it begins to open them up. And let me get back to the harmonic part. A harmonic is a frequency that is created by two other frequencies that kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, build up on one another, okay? And when those frequencies build up, they create a third tone or a harmonic. And I want you to think of like a three-part harmony or a triangle. You have one leg of the triangle that is the sound of the brain vibrating. You have another leg of the triangle that comes in that is this tone that then creates the third leg of the triangle, which is the harmonic, and that's vibrationally the cue within the flesh for those lower rungs of DNA to begin to unlock their information. So what are these frequencies? What are these magical frequencies that create an unlocking of the brain? Well, now this is going to actually vary from person to person. And, I've gotten into some fascinating discussions with practitioners who swear that there's only one frequency that unlocks DNA. Well, there are some base frequencies. 512 hertz is one of them. 438 hertz is one of them. There are some base frequencies that will inspire DNA to want to activate, okay? Yet the harmonics of the brain are going to be determined by what the base level of your brain is doing in the first place, right? Because remember, one of those triangle rungs is the natural noise your brain makes. So why am I telling you all this? Because vibrationally, and we're going to get to how to make a more consistent leg of the triangle where your head noise is in just a second. Yet, why am I talking about opening up these rungs in our DNA? Well, because what is contained in those rungs, just like the knowledge of how to heal a bone is contained in the first two rungs of DNA, what is contained in those lower 10 is incredible information regarding opening the chakras, about healing the emotions, about the miracle capacity that we all have, about transmuting matter. I mean, literally, our superhero capability is in that lower 10. So, wow, right? And if we can just simply unlock those pieces of DNA, so the vibration then creates a translator for the cells outside and creates protein markers from the vibration. The vibration becomes the translator, not the RNA, but the vibration does. What also that DNA contains is not only does it contain physical healing attributes, and that DNA contains physical, I guess I would say goodies, just like our first two rungs do, yet it contains vibrational goodies. It contains directives to the cells about how to receive vibration in order to heal. Not just to patch it up physically, but how to receive vibration. That DNA, those lower 10 rungs, has information to teach our bodies how to heal in a different way, responding to vibration rather than to physical cues. So what does that mean? That means that we literally could think ourselves into wellness. We could literally think ourselves into wellness. Think about that a minute. So, how do we maximize having different vibrations heard by the brain, then added to the natural noise that the brain makes? The key here, the big swing issue, the big variable is the noise that our brain is making on a daily basis. That is no kidding. And I will tell you that if an individual is someone who spends 100% of their time being negative and hating life and hating people and just being so sour and dour and nasty that the entire time the vibration, the synaptic activity in the brain is low, that individual is going to have a really hard time creating the harmonic that opens the lower 10 rungs of the DNA, because what I've been able to observe, and I'm a frequency junkie, okay? I mean, I know I've been going on and on about trying to get this studio set up out here in the country, yet you should see this studio. I mean, it's gorgeous because my background is in sound science. I have an auditory science, a sound science background. I was a music producer for years and years. So you couple that with the way that I'm wired, which is to actually follow frequency and detangle it, and I get the opportunity to see the coolest stuff. Gang, it's so cool. So when I look at the DNA and I look at the slow wavelength of the brain when we are in a space of depression, duress, chaos, anger, that vibration in the brain is actually a lower frequency, okay? Those synapses are firing slower. They are creating a different tone in the head. And I'm a weirdo, okay? I will admit it, I'm weird. And I can hear on this sub-psychic level the vibrations in people's heads. And it's this low kind of that's present. I mean, it's lower than that. I can't get my voice that low. When people have a base operating system of negativity in their brain, you can hear it. I mean, it's like a weird old machine just humming away in the basement that's twice as low as what I just tried to produce for you. Okay. Now, if you're happy, if you're in love, if you're out there, the brain has this very lyrical high vibration because the synapses are firing faster. So the faster that activity goes, I want you to think about a sound wave. The faster the sound wave, the higher the frequency. Okay. The lower or slower the sound wave, the lower the frequency. And when we're depressed, we're actually not firing that much brain activity off. Now, if we get into a manic state and we're way too high and we're way too crazy and the front of the brain is like, blah, man, that just sounds like your ears ringing to me on that sub-psychic level. It's just like, it's like hiss. It's like, and that's no fun. Okay, that's awful. So the happy vibration in the head, the love vibration, it just sounds like this nice, high, open ringing, kind of like a, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that I'm trying to actually make these sounds for you, yet I'm trying to communicate this topic. So if you have that resonant, happy, joyful love ringing, that appears to activate that bottom 10 rung DNA. It appears to be the missing piece when our brain hears, that 430 hertz, 438 hertz, 512 hertz. I mean, you guys can Google the hertz online that can affect our DNA triggering and all that. And a lot of that has been scientific study. So you can Google all that. However, the portion that we all are responsible for is what leg of the triangle in our mind, what sound is our brain making all the time? And nobody ever talks about this. I mean, Lord Almighty, I'm not even a science major. I'm not even a scientist. Well, I mean, okay, I have a acoustic sciences background, but I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm a psychic and I'm a translator. So I look at this stuff and I'm like, why are we not talking about the base resonance of the brain and how it affects frequency and harmonics of the brain, which unlock these lower 10 buckets of DNA, which ignite our superpowers and enable us to be in that more happy space more often? Why aren't we doing this? Well, I think in part we don't know about it all that much. And I think in part we do know about it. And we are dead frightened to empower people to unlock abilities in their DNA that would allow people's cellular structure to completely heal on its own, that would allow us to transmute matter, walk through walls, pick things up with our mind. I mean, I'm not kidding. This is what's in the lower 10, okay? But instead, what do? We come home. We're very tired. We sit on the couch. We turn on the TV. The frequency of the news is horrendous. You know that that frequency and the monotony of it actually begins to trigger the brain to shut down portions of its processing because it's just like getting hit with a machine gun. Sound and the brain have a huge, huge relationship. And we are cued biologically by certain tones. Now, the people who read the news, gang, I know I work in media, so this part is not psychic. This part is just a dang fact. All right. The people that work in news, broadcasters, are trained to have an authoritative way of speaking. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Now think about that. Where have you heard that tone before? Johnny, I told you, you are not going to leave that room until it's absolutely clean. Mary, you're not going to wear that to school because people are going to think you're a harlot. That's where we've heard that tone. Think about it. You don't want to take that job. You can't reach for the stars. You will ruin your family. Same tone. The same tone, okay? It's the same tone. So when we have this tone that triggers the brain, that triggers us biologically that something is wrong, we go into a lockdown position psychologically. We're not inspired to take action. We're inspired to lock down and just take the information and listen and see what's happening and what's the consequence going to be. Now, I really can't speak to whether or not the broadcast industry is aware that this triggers the flight or fight instinct of the mind, or if they do, because our broadcast industry, our media, and I'm not talking about individuals who work in the media. We have amazing people who work in media who just want to do the best job, getting the best news out there. I mean, that's honestly the truth. There's good people in every field, okay? That being said, the conglomerate that is the media, that is messaging, that is programming, and we talk about this on the show. So I have to wonder, are the people who are training these broadcast talent to speak this way, do they have a background understanding that this creates a shutdown and a dependence on the authoritative voice in the talking box? Are they aware of that? So the point here is that if you sit down and you soak up the news all the time, and you're da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, it's getting triggered in the brain, where's the joy? Where's the love? Where's the levity? That third leg of your triangle is not going to fire off. I mean, it's going to fire off, yet it's not going to produce the harmonic that could then heal the body, that could then unlock. The harmonic does not act as the RNA. We're going to call it the harmonic train. There is no harmonic train to unlock those lower 10 DNA functions. So gang, how do we get around that? Because we can't stop living in the world, not unless you're a multimillionaire or you just pull the plug and go live on an uninhabited island, which, believe it or not, I am seeing a lot of people doing that right now. I am seeing people leave the rat race and literally disappear off to parts of the world where you do not need to kill yourself to live. This is becoming a thing. And the more we put focus on the almighty dollar, the more we put focus on fear and hatred, especially in the United States, they're moving. And it makes me sad. And we're not even covering this in the news. I personally know 5 families that have gone to New Zealand, Costa Rica, Brazil, just to get out of this constant negativity and to raise their kids in an environment where the big brother is not going da 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 24/7. Okay? Now, I'm not suggesting we all leave America. I love my country. Oh my God. I'm just suggesting that people can't take it. And their brains are going, I need a break. Because why are we fleeing? Because on a base evolutionary level, humanity understands that it's time to unlock those lower 10 rungs of DNA. It is time to unlock all of that. And even the cadence in which I'm speaking, even the tonality that I'm creating this podcast with, that tonality is purposeful. I'm a singer. And I'm extremely vibrationally sensitive, and I am aware of what these frequencies do to the brain. And so I have an opportunity to do the best I can do when I am conveying this information, to create it in a frequency or a tone that allows the brain to activate that one triangle over there while you're listening, that one leg, to create a harmonic of full absorption. And it's not like I'm trying to brainwash you, okay? It's just that I am aware of what the love frequency is. I am aware of what the joy frequency is. And I am incredibly blessed by the luck of the draw, or maybe it's just my base design because this is what I'm here on the planet to do, to have a vocal mechanism that can create tones that resonate and can continue to resonate in that space that allows that leg of your brain to create that harmonic. And some of you may have noticed when you listen to these podcasts, you might start to get sleepy or you might start to zone out. And actually, that's not the worst thing. That's a good thing. That means that your brain has switched into a theta wave pattern and you are just receiving. And I do my very best in these broadcasts to create a vibrational language for your brain, that when you're listening, you're able to absorb. And even if I'm talking about a heavier subject, that third leg of the triangle begins to vibrate and says, wait a minute, I'm going to start unlocking my lower 10 rungs of my DNA to begin to activate my greatest spiritual gifts and talents. Now, I mean, I don't have some superhero power to be able to unlock your brain, yet I am aware of the frequencies and the cadence triggers that create our brain to just go, oh, God, that's nice. Right on. And a lot of it I learned later. I didn't even know I was doing it, to be honest. I learned about it as I got in and was learning the science of frequency and brain triggering. It was something I was doing it before I learned about it. So clearly, Mother, Father, God just made me this way for whatever reason. And it's interesting, some folks find my cadence to be just grating. It grates on them. They can't stand my voice. They can't stand the way I talk. And there's an actual physical reason for that. Because if you're somebody and your vibration is down here and your world is very slow and dark, and here I come, the human Muppet of love, right? And it's wee and everything's just up here. That begins to create a harmonic in the brain of that person that's operating, well, not a harmonic, but it creates, the brain has to work a little harder to process all the information that's coming in on that higher frequency, auditorily. Okay? So that's going to feel icky to that person. They're going to be like, God, the hell's your problem? And not to mention, some people just flat don't like me. I am not some people's cup of tea. They think I'm overly perky and fake and phony and all these other things, and that's fine too, whatever. Yet I'm talking about the triggering of the brain based upon just the sheer tonality of my voice. And I mean, I've literally seen comments, this is so weird, on YouTube, on Facebook, and people will type in and say, I would love to listen to you, but your voice is so annoying. You're so perky. I just want to punch you in the face. It literally hurts my head. And it probably does, So again, you're not going to make everybody happy. It is what it is. Moving on. So when we deal with the brain, gang, and we're dealing with these resonant frequencies, I feel blessed to at least be able, because of my vocal mechanism, I'm a soprano, to have a particular resonant frequency that helps prime the brain, at least for you to create that resonation that could then unlock all kinds of potential. Now, you don't have to be a soprano. You know who else could do that when she spoke was Karen Carpenter. That woman, huge empath, God bless her soul. That's why she was anorexic. She couldn't take how everything felt. She was an alto. In my next life, gang, I'm going to be an alto, and be able to hit those, bless the beast and the children. I mean, I can't do it. That goes through my nose. It went through her chest. And because of that resonant frequency, that would open up the mind in a certain way. Neil Diamond, he has that effect too. He's a baritone. So you don't have to have a high voice. It's about how the overtones hit the brain. Okay. And that's that's like years worth of study. So, but just those are the bullet points. Okay. So back to vibration. So how do we get our brains in a place to hear so that we can unlock that base vibration that is so important? How do we do that? Well, limit your consumption of news, for one thing. Go ahead and listen to it, but then afterwards, put on some chanting monks. Okay? Have you ever heard those monks? And it's probably going to make you laugh because I'm going to try to reproduce this sound. Have you ever heard those monks that have super deep voices and they're like, oh, they sound like didgeridoos, and then there's these harmonies that go over the top of them. Put on chanting monks for a while. That does the same thing. Your brain hears that and creates harmonics because of that resonant frequency. The human voice triggers the brain in a way that sounds don't, frequencies don't. The human voice also carries with it intention, it carries with it energy, and it carries with it connection. So if you want to get away from the monotonous freaking Charlie Brown school teacher. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I mean, literally, that is what this is in our brains. That's how our brain hears this stuff. So give yourself a chance to decompress and listen to some monks. Listen to your favorite singer. And certain singers have it and others don't have it. It's a healing capacity in the voice. It's really a healing aptitude. It doesn't mean you're a better singer. It means you're carrying with you a different vibration. Karen Carpenter had that. Again, Neil Diamond, even when he was getting all, they're coming to America. I mean, even when he was getting gritty, he was also a chanter. And Neil Diamond used to do some chanting at temple. He's Jewish. So there is a different use for the voice. And in this year, actually, I really want to endeavor to, in the remainder of the year, which is going to be busy, but I want to create chanting music so that you can listen to it and just relax into it and just let those harmonics be created in the brain to vibrate open those bottom 10 rungs. Now, I've created some music like that, and I've created it with tones and overtones that then again inspire the brain to hear in a certain way to unlock those lower 10. And that's great. Yet I've noticed that the human voice unlocks it like none other. I mean, have you ever listened to a church choir? Or, when you listen to the Vienna Boys Choir and all of that echoing in the cathedrals, and it just gives you goosebumps. There's a reason, because that music was composed to allow that triangle in your brain's synaptic frequency to be maximized to create vibration that opens those lower 10 rungs of DNA. Those composers knew it back then. People would go to church and they'd listen to the chanting of the choir and they would physically feel different when they left. Because the DNA then has a tonal translator, and those lower rungs are releasing information that are vibrational to the cells about how to release toxins, how to release anxiety, how to release just crap that we don't need, okay? So make sure you're making time to allow the vibration of the mind to unlock the lower 10 rungs of the DNA in order to teach the cells how to release that which no longer serves us. And especially in our time frame where we're picking up, weird junk out of the ethers and weird junk out of the air and the water. Our poor baby cells are like, I didn't sign up for this crap when I was growing in the womb. Actually, technically speaking, you did. If you read the fine print in your life-to-life contract, you too signed up to come down and achieve great things in this lifetime, including but not limited to unlocking the lower 10 rungs of your DNA. True story. So, vibration, it is super important. It is super important. And if you are someone who lives in a city, okay, there is a lower hum in that city. That's not a bad thing. Actually, that lower city hum, the brain interprets that as it would white noise, although it's called brown noise. But the brain interprets it like rushing water or a trickling waterfall, not the horn honking. But you know that city sound? I used to hear it all the time. I lived in Los Angeles for 11 years. And the first 3 years, could not sleep and literally stared at the ceiling with super big white eyeballs all night long, like I had my head in a beehive. I was not prepared energetically for how it would feel to live in a metro area that, if you factored in all the surrounding counties, was 60 million people. Are you kidding me? I came from a state, the entire state of Montana at that time had 900,000 people. Now, I think we just recently broke 1 million people in the whole state. And we are the 4th largest state in the union. And my wife and my daughter have moved out to the country. And it's a great place for me to translate information for you. And I think about living in LA and how oppressive that was. Yet I used to focus on the city hum. And if you live in a city, you know what I'm talking about. It's like this that's just constantly going on out there. And about 5 years in, all of a sudden, I no longer heard the sirens. I no longer heard the police helicopters. I no longer heard the horn honking. My psyche screened that out. And all I heard was the hum. And my brain interpreted it more like a white noise in nature. So if you really also want to trigger your synapses to be processing that love, joy, peace harmonic, okay, listen to nature sounds. Biologically, when we hear certain sounds, when we hear birds chirping and water trickling, biologically, our psyche and our body relaxes. Because birds chirping say it's daytime. So we don't have any predators that are looking at us at night because it's the daytime. Water trickling means we have resources. We're not going to go thirsty. We're probably going to be able to eat because there's fish in the water. So biologically, on a base level, in that reptilian brain that we carry around within us, because we are such an amalgamation of all the incarnations of what we've ever been and what we're going to be, our psyche relaxes when we hear birds chirping and water trickling. Because our mammal says, yay, I'm safe in a patch in the sunshine and no predators are after me and I'm in a clearing and I'm by water and all is well. And your brain, with its own synaptic noise, its resonation is going to lift. And it's going to have that sound in it because we are relaxed. Now, it's rough because there are many, many things in our culture that create a lower brain frequency. And I've talked about these at length on this podcast. We have very low frequency arrays that run through the ground that broadcast on 6 hertz. That's a low frequency that drives the brain is optimized at 7.83 hertz. Okay, now this gets confusing because you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought 438 hertz unlocked DNA. Wait, we're talking about pulse frequencies. 7.38 hertz, okay, is a pulse frequency. And it's actually very low. But when we reproduce it, we produce a harmonic of it in 7.83 Schumann resonance music. And it's about here. Because we can't technically hear it, the brain feels it. It's a pulse that comes out of the earth, okay? So at 7.83 hertz, our brain is maximized in how it creates chemicals. Well, our military pumps information through the ground at 6 hertz on very low frequency arrays. And 6 hertz, when directed at the human brain, has been shown categorically to cause depression, suicidal thoughts. It slows down the synaptic growth of a fetus and can lend itself to autism. I mean, it's not a good thing for the human brain, but we're pumping it all over the place. Just like our Navy, and I'm not slamming on the Navy. I have family and friends in the Navy, and I love that armed service. It does a lot for us. The bone to pick I have with the Navy is that they send frequencies and transmissions through the water in these bursts of very low waves, and it kills whales and dolphins. I mean, it's like just sucker punching them in their sonar, and it blinds them for a while, and then it eventually kills them. So hopefully the Navy will stop using these very low bursts to communicate between their submarines. And in the same way that whales communicate for thousands of miles, the Navy tries to do that as well, but they use compressed sound waves that are encoded, and they literally are like laser beams that kill these marine animals. And I hope to God they don't do that, because we lose our whales and our dolphins, and we're in a world of hurt. So hopefully they'll stop doing that. But it was killing that marine life for a long time. And not only does the water resonates with that also. Okay. And what is salt water? The biggest conductor of sound and electricity on the planet of Earth. So then, boom, the whole Earth resonates with that low frequency. And God only knows what that's doing to the humans, because those low frequencies go miles. They don't just go through the water. They go through miles, hundreds of miles of land. So God knows what's being impacted with the humans. And it makes me sad because we spend so little time really researching what frequency does to the human brain. We know enough to know what kind of weapons are made illegal by the Geneva Convention. There are certain tonal weapons that are illegal. There are certain brain wave frequency weapons that were made illegal for the rules of war, which again, I will say one more time, what an utterly stupid thing. Here's a good rule for war. Don't have it. Ta-da! Super quick, super easy, saves lives, just don't have it. How about that? All right. So back to vibration. Vibration runs all creation, okay? Vibration runs all creation. Vibration connects all creation. Vibration communicates through multiple multiverses. When I'm speaking to angels, they are in a different dimension than I am in. Otherwise, they'd fry me like a frickin' crispy. I'd be like that person who walks into a nuclear reactor without a suit on. I would start to blister up and burst into a million pieces. I mean, they are in a different dimension. So when those angels communicate with me, they are using a frequency, a vibration that permeates dimensions. Okay? Vibration permeates dimensions. It permeates flesh. It permeates mountains. Vibration is the key to creation. And it's also the key to destruction, which is the key to creation. And you go in a great big circle, and around we go. So this is why it is important to watch the vibration that your body is immersed in. And if you live in a city, it chaps my hide when folks in my field get on these holy rolling high horses, which are quite frankly a bunch of screaming crap, about, well, if you live in a city, you'll never be pure. You need to simply be one with nature. Otherwise, you will never hear creation. That's a load of crap, okay? It'll be easier for you to clock onto the earth and nature. But you hear creation every day because why? Because let's go to the very top of this podcast. Because within each one of your cells is a wormhole to creation, the DNA. It is a wormhole. It is a vacuum. It is its own high resonation tank that exists out of the flesh, out of space-time. It exists in a different vibration. And it holds all the secrets of the universe. So when you have people in my field saying you have to move to the country in order to connect with God or universe or source or the earth, no, you don't. You can go within. Now, does it take a little more mental focus? Well, sure. For some people, living in the city is comforting. You're surrounded by others who can help you. The tribal mammalian instinct in human beings is ignited, and you are given a sense of safety by being around all of these resources, corner grocery stores, coffee shops. You're right by a hospital. And for those folks who are wired that way, you can relax into that white noise of city sound, and you can use that safety net as a meditation to go within the self, to access the nature within the DNA. We're all different. I'm a weirdo that's deeply affected by frequency, so I live out by the mountains on the edge of Yellowstone Park because I'm weird. Okay, and I don't mean weird in a bad way. I mean I'm just weird, odd. I have a variance in me. Everybody has a variance in them. You have a variance in you. Figure out where you resonate. Find where you resonate and do your best to align your flesh with that environment. For some, it's a beach. For some, it's a high-rise in New York. For some, it's Minneapolis. I mean, whatever it is, find your place where you can feel in your brain, your mind, that your synaptic hum goes, ah. You'll feel it. You'll feel it. And find that space to be able to create that third leg of the triangle. Now, if you can't get to that space, put on some headphones and listen to some nature sounds. Or if you're somebody who gets completely freaked out by nature, put on some headphones and just listen to city sounds with rain. You know, I know a lot of people. I had a lot of friends in LA that said, God bless you, Danielle. I don't know how the heck you could live where there's no people. And I mean, I obviously I'm living around people. I mean, you know, I can see my neighbors. I'm not living in a compound on the top of a mountain, for God's sakes. Yet they're a ways away from me. Yet for some, that's an uncomfortable place to be. So it doesn't matter. There's no judgment. Find what resonates for you and focus on that resonation. Do unlock the frequency of the brain with some monk chants, Tibetan bowls. Harmonics created by the 7 layers of a Tibetan bowl will also create that up in the brain, and it enables us to unlock those lower 10. So here's kind of the big wraparound, as I say, the big jazz hand ending of our podcast is, what do we do with those unlocked pieces of data? I want to make sure to get this in here, is that when we unlock those rungs of DNA, we will feel many different physical things. We might feel excited. We might feel energized. We may feel like we are tired or anxious. We may feel like our compass needle is broken because physically our DNA begins to rewrite itself based upon the vibrational cues that released information that becomes then vibrational information into the cell. And our cells are water, and our cells are designed to respond not only to protein prompts, but to vibrational prompts. And the love vibration opens our cells like nobody's business. Really. I mean, being hugged, being loved on, being told you are loved, being told you're amazing, having somebody pat you on the back or rub your tummy. You know, if you have someone in your life, a friend, a spouse, that you can trade foot rubs with, do it. You know, the limbic system of the brain is triggered by touch. and our endorphins are released. So if you have this experience of, say, listening to chanting monks and just absorbing it, and say you're laying there and you trade experiences with having somebody rub your feet while you're listening to monks chanting, it's an incredible experience. And back in the day, before we created so much chaos and icky sound on the earth, people would literally just sit outside in silence and listen to crickets. Or they would listen to wind through the grass. And that would trigger that synaptic resonance in the brain to go, ah, instead of, Most of us are in the category because of a lot of things. Now, what do we always have control of, folks? First of all, control is an illusion. Secondly, what is the one thing that we can make a difference over or control? How we react to anything. So we may not be able to change our living situation and move to Fiji tomorrow. We may not be able to move into the heart of New York City where we're the most comfortable. Yet we can change what we put into our ears. Everybody, to a degree, if you are someone who is blessed with that ability to hear, can change that up. If you are someone who doesn't actually have the option of vibrational sound hitting your brain, let me get this in really quickly. Your brain can still create its own synaptic hum. Even if your brain isn't necessarily, quote, hearing it, it's still happening. So experience things that give you joy. Experience anything that makes you feel loving or safe. Physically sit and put your fingers in a creek and feel that water while you're sitting in a clearing with the sun hitting you. Those vibrations of those actual things will still trigger those synapses to go, ha, even though the brain is not necessarily hearing the vibration. The brain is still experiencing a vibration. So people who are born deaf, their brain is still translating vibration, even though they may not consciously be recognizing what the quote sound is that corresponds with that vibration. So just because a person cannot hear or is born deaf does not mean that they are not experiencing those harmonics in their brain. They still are. So just know that. It's not like, oh, gee, you can't unlock your DNA if you're deaf. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course you can, because the brain is still resonating. Okay? Oh, this is fun. I love talking to you about this stuff because we are meant to evolve. That's what's happening right now. Why do you think there's such a flood of negativity on the news? Why do you think there is such a flood of da-da, 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 da, da-da, 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 da-da? Why do you think it's permeating right now? Because there are powers that be in our physical world that are aware of every single thing I just told you. And they don't want us to go there. They want us to stay manipulatable and vulnerable, and they want us to not engage that frontal lobe. They want us to remain in ignorance, in darkness. They want us to remain on that level. So we buy their drugs and we buy their stuff and we buy, and we're dependent on them like a junkie on a feed that just injects us with something that may make us go, I mean, at least we'll get a little lift that day. Believe me, it makes me sad. It breaks my heart that some people's sole lesson is to try to suppress the billions. However, I don't have a bone to pick with those individuals. I simply wish to counter the efforts that they make with education and letting you know that the reason that those folks do not want us to unlock those lower 10 is that we will be able to feel one another. We will be able to hear one another. We will be able to heal the self, and we will not need to go forward and spend $100,000 on chemotherapy. One of my very dearest friends, my soul sister, Holly, was diagnosed with a cancer that was in her breast. It jumped to her sternum, and then it jumped to her lymph nodes. And she was told it was stage 4 all over her body. And medical science said, I'm sorry, you're dead in 1.5 to 2 years max. And Holly changed her vibration. She changed the vibration of her food. She is completely vegan. She took out salt. She took out negativity from her life. She stopped watching the news. She gratitude journaled. And 11 months later, she was completely cancer-free. That is the power of unlocking our lower 10 rungs of DNA. And Holly is going to go out and teach people how to do this. And I'm going to have her on the show when I can get her up here to Gallatin Gateway. So what I want to tell you is that control, do your best. Not control. Control is a bad word. Make great choices. How's that? Make better choices about what comes through your ears. And if you are a non-hearing person, make great choices about what your eyes align with and the experiences that you translate through your mind, because that's going to create a synaptic hum. Even if you're not physically hearing it, it's still happening in the skull. I love all of you, and I am so excited about what our human potential is in this time frame. It is phenomenal for me to watch what's happening. It is so exciting. And I'd love to share even more messages about this with you. If you happen to be in Portland, Oregon on September 8th, my Ascension Tour is going to Unity of Portland. It's a 3-hour event. We will next be in Boulder, Colorado on September 22nd. Super regrettably, we've had to postpone our Philadelphia stop the first part of October. And I'm sorry that's still on the website. We've not been able to get into the website. We've had some issues with taking that down. But I will be in Minneapolis on October 20th, and I'm going to be translating a heck of a lot more material to people in those rooms live so that we can actually physically feel the resonance of the room change, and we can unlock that DNA, and we can begin to experience what it is to be alive and awake in this time frame. And I'll have a question and answer period, and a few folks are even going to get readings. We're going to choose some random folks for actual personal live angelic readings during the event. And those tickets are $75 for general admission. I do have a $155 VIP ticket, which means you get the event. Plus, you get to hang out with me and up to 40 other people. We're just hanging out for 2.5 hours afterwards. Just shooting the breeze and connecting, and I get to know you and just talk like human beings used to. And it'll be awesome. So if you want to make those events, head over to ascensiontour.com. We also have more stops later in the year. Check those out. And remember, go forward in this week and choose beautiful vibrations. Let's unlock those lower 10 rungs of DNA and watch your world change. I love you. Have a great week.